So welcome, councillors, to the draft operational plan and budget workshop. This is, as we all know, a non-decision making forum. It is for the opportunity for us to have a discussion with you on, where we're at in the process at the moment, and to, get the vibe of councillors with regards to things, so that we can take that into consideration when we present a recommendation to council. I have to say, I've been in local government for 30 years, and this has probably been the toughest budget process that I've been through in that 30 years. A lot doesn't keep me awake at night, but this one certainly has. Wow. So it's been a really tough process. I think where we're at is pretty good at the moment, but I think what it alludes to me is that next year is going to be even tougher. And this is before the fuel crisis kicked in. So yeah, it's a really tough situation that we find ourselves in. And financial sustainability was the topic of debate at the Country Mayors Association meeting last week, and we are not alone in the struggles that we are having as a local government council within New South Wales and Australia. So we wanted to sort of take you through a few of the, quite a high level of detail today with regards to the operational plan, and then how the budget fits into that. Have a bit of a discussion around some of the things that we, have had to look at in each of the different service areas, how it impacts on capital works. And again, a precursor, this is prior to us even getting to the impact of the fuel situation that we're facing at the moment. In relation to the fuel stuff, we had a meeting yesterday where we estimate that the impact on council's operations, not the capital side of it, the operations at the moment with the increase in the fuel price, is between $40,000 and $50,000 a week. So that's not just fuel costs, but that's the increased costs that we're getting passed on to us by contractors and that type of thing. So it's about us having to look at what do you de-scope from projects, de-scope from services, to actually still try and fit within our budget and still provide a level of service to the community. And what does that look like? So we're having these discussions at the moment to say, well, okay, do you not street sweep with a street sweeper at the moment? Do you do it with staff? Because the cost of actually doing it with a street sweeper might mean that you don't have the staff to then be able to do it. So they're the sorts of things that we're discussing at the moment as an organisation. And it is certainly, how often do we say it's unprecedented? Well, God, that seems like we're having that discussion every 12 months at the moment. And so it certainly is a challenging environment that we are faced with at the moment. So not to put a downer on things, like we think we're coming to you with something that is workable in the current situation. But I just want to make you aware of that it is a challenge to still be able to provide the same level of service to our community.
So your sleepless nights are purely about money, correct?
And petrol. Fuel.
Yeah. Well, it's about meeting the expectations of the community. And that is getting more and more difficult. And when you look at the things that we're faced with right across the board with the service levels that we need to provide, and the uncertainty that we're facing, whether it's with climate, whether it's with fuel, whether it's with expectations from the community, it's getting more and more difficult. So
are we hearing anything from the state and the federal government in terms of that stuff?
On the fuel side?
Well, just about the funding. Because really, unless there's changes there. The other day, Chris, when you were talking about the general fund, did you say 82% of the councils? Was that something like that?
I've got some, 82. It was 82 councils. I've got some slides on it later to we can do a bit of a zoom out later in terms of the industry, and yeah, I'll go through those.
What we're doing at the moment is we're going to all the funding bodies that we've got grants with at the moment, to say we've committed to delivering this under this funding deed. However, it's unlikely we're now going to be able to deliver the same extent of the works. Either give us more money or let us de-scope the project, because we just physically can't deliver the same level of works with the same amount of money. It's just impossible.
But there's been no conversation in country mayors or anything about I know there always is about federal assistance grants, because I mean that's going to be the only thing that's really going to solve it.
Yeah, they're just about to launch a campaign, for want of a better word, called Invest in Us. So it's invest in us so that we can invest in them is the catchphrase. And basically it's reigniting the whole debate around get the fags to 1%. But as you well know, Dom, to be honest, I can't see that there's a lot of traction with the government or the opposition. Really, I haven't had anyone, even leading up to an election, state or federal, on either side say, yeah, we think that's a good idea, we'll support it. They'll all come around it in different ways. You know, Albanese has said that they'll look at it, they'll make it more workable, but he hasn't really made any change to the actual percentage that we're getting. The coalition, to me, still trot out, oh yeah, but we had the local, what was it?
The local infrastructure grants money.
Yeah, wasn't that better because it's better targeted, you know? So I think there's still a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of frustration, but well, we got to keep trying. That's the thing, because, you know, like ultimately, as they've said at Country Mayors last year, another year or two, we're seriously going to see a lot of rural councils that go under. And that's where it's at.
But because I know within the water directorate as well, they were talking about the water crisis. I mean, here is not so bad, but you go further west, it's diabolical in terms of, you know, infrastructure backlog, the ability for councils to pay for 6 different water plants when they've got, 6,000 ratepayers or whatever. And I know all the time that I was on local government New South Wales, there was a constant question that I was asking about action, because writing letters, and it's right, you're right, it doesn't change, it doesn't matter. When Labor came in, I thought we'd get some change.
Yeah.
There was no change.
Mm.
So I mean, I think we've got, the local government sector itself has to ask questions about what we can do to actually bring that, things like not picking up the bins is, like it's one of those things that happened in Ipswich about a different matter, but geez, they fixed that up quick because everyone was going, oh my God. But I know that's not a question for here, but that's a question in terms of a larger conversation, because what my experience being on the board was we were constantly just patted on the top of the head and said, yeah, we're looking at it. But was never any action, and we just keep falling further and further behind. And I totally get it. I mean, I think I've been seeing this coming. I think we probably all have, that at some stage we're going to struggle on the funding that we're getting through the government. And it is such an important part of what happens in communities is what local government does. And so I don't even think the community gets that.
And the other thing I think is important is the actual distribution model of the fags as well. At the moment, country mayors are saying we're going to wait till we get the 1%, then we'll take up that battle. I think that's a mistake because, as you know, there's metro councils that don't need the money that still get it, and probably at a proportion that's way out of what you call is fair compared to some of the rural councils. So that needs to be fixed as well. But you got to grow the bucket too. So
what we might do is we'll kick into this. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of discussion throughout the day. And some of the slides Chris has got will sort of give you some of the answers to some of the questions I'm sure you've got. But look, if you've got a question during the day, please just throw it out there. Like, we're better to deal with it at the time if we're getting too far behind. I sort of said to Todd this morning, you reckon we're going to take up the whole 5 hours? And Todd said, I think we're going to be lucky to get through it in the 5 hours. So keeping that in mind, because we've all got opinions on this, and it is a difficult thing, and we are charged as an organisation to deliver services for our community. So that's really what this is about, we've got some suggestions here today. We'll get the vibe from the council body so that when we provide you with the recommendation, it's taking all that into consideration. But this is not a decision-making forum. This is a discussion and allowing us to present to you with what we've got at the moment. So I just want to make that clear. And hence why we've also not got the mayor sitting up here. This is not a council meeting. So, all right, hand over to you, Todd.
Right. Thanks, Mark. So I guess, to paint the, overall picture, we are a very small council, relatively large area, huge community expectation. And over time, we have created, a program that punches well above our weight. What we have just spoken about and what we'll speak about throughout the whole day is that pinch point that continually grows for us to be able to continue to deliver that punching above our weight expectation in an environment where we are financially constrained. So I guess last year we undertook the whole overhaul of our community engagement process and created the plan for the future, which we have. And so effectively, this is a bit of a different model for New South Wales. There's only 3 councils that undertake this model, in the sense that the 10-year community strategic plan, the 4-year delivery program, and 1-year operational plan are all in one place. A lot of the time they sit in 3 different documents. Some councils have the 4-year and 1-year plan together, but predominantly the community strategic plan sits outside because it's not directly council's plan. It is the community's plan for where the community sees its future in 10 years, and then council sets its 4-year term within its delivery program around how it's going to work towards achieving that. And we've taken on this model, I guess, partly because we are a small place. At the end of the day, council becomes the custodian of the community strategic plan anyway, because there isn't another body that is going to carry it. And so for us, really, it's semantics around whether they should or shouldn't sit together, but effectively they should talk as an integrated planning approach. So my argument is, well, you just rip the first 20 pages out and that's your 10-year plan. So what we've done here is we're working on the 2nd year of the plan, which is the operational plan specifically. We will go through at a high level over the next bunch of slides the process around reviewing and developing this plan, what has changed, and we will also highlight anything that has changed that impacts the 4-year delivery program, something quite minor but sort of strengthening in there, and we'll go through that as well. Last week I did send out an email with a whole lot of documents. I expect everyone has read them thoroughly and is ready for questions. So in that there was a complete list of the action items that are in the operational plan. And I guess just to reiterate that last year when we adopted the plan for the future, we did adopt the 4-year plan, which articulates what we're doing every year for the next 4 years. So every year what we will do is review that, and if anything sort of tweaks or changes, we will build them in, take them out and do this process. So today what we're going to focus on is the items that are different to the existing adopted plan in the operational plan, not go through line by line every single item, otherwise we'll be here for months. Okay, so that's kind of the context, and on the right of this screen is our integrated planning reporting framework. This is a statewide framework that councils I guess operate under, and then you'll see in the middle there the light bulb idea up the top is the 10 years, and then that feeds down into the 4-year and 1-year plans, and then ultimately we report on that. Here at council we report quarterly through a progress report which we've aligned with our quarterly budget review statements, and then we present an annual report at the end of the year as well. Thank you, Brock. So this is a bit of the timeline around how we start to work on these documents. It's quite an extensive process. So we begin this engagement late last year, where we sort of bring together the broader group leadership team to start thinking about what the plans look like for the following year. That is a huge body of work around looking at budgets, looking at our capital works preparation, what our operational plans are saying, and what different programs we need to prepare for in the following year. So you'll see over there at the end of that kind of red pyramid, we've got the March area. This is where we are kind of today, where we start to pull together the draft documents and then bring this to a bit of a workshop with councillors around where we're headed. Things are shifting with the code of meeting practice around how we undertake these types of exercises. There is a bit of loose guidance that, you know, working through these strategic priorities are still something that are very important to ensure we've got councillor input on. It's built into the IPR framework about ensuring that councillors are engaged through that process. So that's why we're here today. And so the challenge we have again with changing our meeting dates and bringing them forward a week, and then you add Easter into that mix, effectively we'll be working this week to finalise these documents for business paper next week. So pretty crazy timeline to try and meet. But today is about really unpacking all of this information. And if at any point anyone needs a break, please just say we need to just stop for 5 minutes because we will be talking through a lot. So these documents will go to the April Council meeting for public exhibition with the intent to have them adopted with any amendments in June. And so that's generally the legislated framework requirement. And so that's the intent for us to meet that. So you will recall through the process last year, we undertook the community scorecard process. We're very lucky here at Council that we have a very engaged community and have about 12 to 13% of our population respond. So what we did is, you see on the right side, there's a whole list of service outputs, and we've categorised those under the 5 key themes in the community strategic plan. And the community was asked a range of questions around how they felt around the satisfaction of those service levels. This is a bit of a, I guess, a chart, and we've printed some out and put them on the table, so you can just refer back to them throughout the day. So when we're having discussions around budget processes, around how much each of our services costs us to run, what we're looking to deliver versus you know, what we need to juggle, this is a bit of a reflection of what our community has said is important to us. And you'll see in the capital work slides and again in the finance slides, we do have some information. I guess you will draw back to these kind of views of our community and where we need to consider how we focus services. So at the moment, you'll see we've got a good portion of our services over there on the left side of the Kaizen chart. And I guess, you know, looking at things that are up in that top left quadrant are kind of where people are very satisfied with where service levels are at. And then to the direct opposite to that, right down there in that bottom right quadrant, where people feel things need more focus. So you can see there we've got the road program sitting right out as an outlier, right outside, and that's something I'll probably just make note of. And then when we get to the capital works program, we'll talk a little bit more about, I guess, community perception versus work actually being delivered on the ground, progress we've made as a council, and then how we consider those sorts of things in balance with what the community is saying. So in the plan for the future, we do have these 5 key themes. It was interesting. I was at a finance intensive last week down in Bathurst, and the IPR presenter there did a bit of a snapshot of the state, and majority of councils now have 5 themes under their strategic plans. In the past, it used to fluctuate quite a bit. City of Sydney still has 10, but they presented, yeah, majority of people have 5. Some people have even got as low as 4 themes in their plans, and generally they are things like community, environment, things like civic leadership, you know, infrastructure, and culture and things like that. So these are our 5 themes you see here, and up the top layer there is the objective. That is the community 10-year objective, where they would like to see the Shire in 10 years from now. And then under that in the strategy area are the things that council has set for the next 4 years in how it's going to work towards delivering against community aspiration. So we do have one change in our operational plan this year, and you'll see over there in the right side in the civic leadership column, we've highlighted the box. It might be a little bit hard to read. I know I can't see it there.
Can we get that on our computers? On these different slides?
You can if you join the meeting, yeah, definitely.
We get echo then. Or we get echo. We can do that.
As long as you're on mute and
Yeah, as long as you're on mute.
no speakers on, should be all right.
So to talk through this change, effectively what we've got in the current plan, we have 16, I think, individual advocacy operational actions that we will advocate for a range of different things. What we have done is to strengthen the advocacy model, is to pull them out of the individual one-year actions and bring them up into the 4-year strategy section. So that way it makes it more of a term commitment.
Like that.
So just the speaker's mute.
No,
Or who's in?
I was.
Okay.
All right. One more.
It's got to turn your speakers off.
Yeah, it's got to mute
And
it.
microphone and mic it.
Keep going. Todd, I'll just get in there.
So yeah, what we've done is brought that advocacy piece up into the strategies to make it more of a focused area, more of a commitment of council. And then underneath that strategy statement, what we've done in the operational plan, and you may recall, we do have sort of service areas and then we have action items to deliver. We've created that list of those individual operational plan action items that were advocacy topics as, I guess, an underarching kind of list in the strategy area. So that way they don't get lost from year to year. And I guess it makes it kind of more of a focus in our reporting requirement that we create kind of a whole section for advocacy rather than having one over here in community, one over here in resilience, and then they kind of get lost as to what council's doing. We're able to articulate a lot more clearly to the community around all of our advocacy efforts in one space. So that's kind of the only change that's occurred at the strategy level of our operational plan for the year. And then what we're looking to do, yeah, so as I said, the 16 advocacy action items have been moved under the new strategy. And we've also included 2 extra advocacy points, one directly around financial sustainability that was probably not really present in the existing plan, and something around priority week management as well. So just 2 further topics to expand on what we will focus our advocacy efforts over the remainder of the term. And then really throughout the rest of the plan, we've just removed some wording and duplication ideas to make it a little bit easier to read. And then we have 7 new action items that weren't previously scheduled for the 26-27 year that we've included. So I'll just go through them in very quick detail. So you can see here, I've broken it down into the living environment, places for people, resilient economy and civic leaderships. These are the 4 areas where we've built the new topics into. So what we're looking to do is commence that review of the renewal of the waste mains for Marks Hill to Raleigh Reservoir. We're looking to pursue the climate adaptation opportunities through sewer main renewal projects. That'll help mitigate the infiltration during the disaster events. We've also built in a service area statement under places for people for parks and gardens specifically. So what we've sort of identified in reviewing this is some of our service outputs just weren't articulated well enough in the plan. So by bringing that in, it allows us then to talk to the, I guess, different town beautification projects we do in a bit more of a prominent way. So the next one there is to progress the design of the Moleston foreshore upgrades and develop estimates for future budget submissions. Over in the resilient economy area, we've just strengthened how we promote the Bellinger Memorial Hall as the regional venue. It was just something to make that strengthen the reporting outputs that we have on the Mem Hall at the moment. We talk a bit to the usability of it, but we don't really talk to the strategic direction of how we're positioning it in the region. So that way we just sort of build something more in to the reporting outputs for what we're doing in that space. And then in the civic leadership area, sort of updated those service areas to ensure we included finance and our IT services. They were a bit hidden in how we articulated our service outputs under there. We've also reintroduced the review and update of Council's financial sustainability action plan. And as we get through today, you'll completely understand why we think that's an important body of work to keep on the agenda. We've also, down the bottom there, excuse my eyes this morning, review and implement targeted improvements to Council's existing business systems, streamline processes, and improve the customer experience. So we will talk to this in a little bit more detail today as well, but we did have discussions around reviewing our broader ERP, enterprise resource planning, which means all of our software systems. We are going through this budget process and realizing that that is a significant body of work that is outside of our financial capabilities right now.
To an extent. And I guess with regard to that, we're seeking advice from some of the software suppliers out there, because I think the amount of money that's been sort of built in with the business cases were probably at the upper end of gold plating. And so we're just sort of seeking guidance from some of those software suppliers that are under some of the state and local government procurement contracts, whether there's still the ability to do something there. So we're looking into that at the moment. So there is an amount of money in the budget to ensure that we're able to undertake some upgrade activities of our software, but it's not to the extent that was put in the business case. So, but we can sort of elaborate a bit further on that later.
Yeah, because I think I picked up in the draft capital works is still a significant sum of money there.
Yeah, it's $500,000 in there. Yep.
And then the last one on the list there is the scorecard program. So we will be rolling that out every 2 years is the plan. So ensuring that that's in the operational plan for the year ahead. And then that way we'll be able to come back and reflect on, I guess, the performance measures, which is the second printout you have on your table, and it will start to show the difference in community view around how they feel we're tracking against the previous process.
Other councils, do they do the community scorecard biannually or?
So there is a, I guess, a general requirement that councils need to engage and undertake that work on a biannual process. There is a range of ways councils do that. There used to be probably the most standard way was this like phone call process that used to be undertaken, and organisations still do that today. They do like a whole cold call out to community, and the digital survey process is becoming more prevalent because you're able to get these kind of dashboard snapshots that help tell a story over time. So yeah, we've taken on a model which does this community scorecard. That's their product. So not all councils will do the scorecard exactly, but they do some similar sort of product that gives them, I guess, considerations for how they're undertaking their services. So before this, we did something that was more focused on livability, and that helped to create, I guess, the view that of people's sense of place. This process is more focused on services and expectations. And so the intent there is to, over time, look to balance a sustainable council with the expectations of community against service.
So Todd, that the highs on the right side, is that a score out of 10? There's 10, if there's 10 boxes in there.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah, so I believe it's over. I thought it was 100, wasn't it?
Yeah, so this is, I think it's out of 100, Dom.
Each one counts for 10.
Yeah, so it's benchmarked against other councils that participate in the same program. So that's that line is the up the top there, and our dot is where we're sitting within that. So our aim is to get within, the industry average there in those bars. So yeah.
So we're not hitting it on quite a lot according to this, is that right?
Yeah, according to communities, I guess expectation on how the service is facilitated. And then what we'll see when we undertake this exercise again is there'll be a second dot. And so you'll be able to see the dot that was original and whether it's moved. Yeah. And
So there's other, when you say there's only a few councils or there's some councils that are doing, how many?
so there are 3 in New South Wales undertaking this exercise currently. Coffs Harbour has taken it in the past. I'm not too sure if they still run the survey, but this year 3 councils have gone through the exercise.
They're benchmarked.
No. So this is benchmarked across the country. So the difference here is effectively service delivery doesn't change that much from a community expectation of what waste picking up my bins looks like. Right. So so this is, I'd have to get the exact figure. I'm not too sure how many councils, but there are quite a number. Most of them are on the western
I think from that
western coast.
workshop we had with the providers, there's a lot in WA.
Yeah,
wasn't
WA.
Yeah, WA is huge in WA. They are a Western Australia provider, and they've come over to the coast. I will double check how many New South Wales councils still facilitate a scorecard process. I just know that 3 new councils have picked it up this year. But yeah, Coffs Harbour had used it previously. And I guess the intent here is to look at how we're tracking against the benchmark across the country. And as I said, sort of the service expectation doesn't necessarily change from state to state around what a community person views their bin should, how their bin should be collected. It doesn't really relate to whether the legislation is different, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
The only thing I'd say is probably it would be interesting to see. There may be a difference from city to country though. And we've seen that specifically where we've had a number of people move here from city environments. They still expect the same level of service that they would get within the city here within Bellingen. And that's obviously a difficult thing for us to undertake. So that's probably the only difference I'd say, Todd, with regards to that is, yes, expectations might be the same. If you had looked at the similar size council in WA to us, I'd say they've probably got similar expectations. Whereas if you're looking in the city Perth, that's probably quite different than what that we would.
I don't know why you're looking at me.
Because you're the only one looking at me.
Yeah, but a good example, in that community area up the top is public transport. It's about roughly 12 down the list. And you can see that it far outlies from the benchmark. And that would be a pretty clear and accurate look at public transport needs and accessibility in our shire. That, there really isn't any, and so.
And that's really interesting because when the fuel crisis started to kick off, I looked at public transport options for staff to get to work here, say from Coffs Harbour. And the staff member that wanted to get to work by 8:30 in the morning using public transport from Park Beach Plaza needed to leave at 8:34 p.m. the night before.
Oh, gosh.
It was actually quicker to walk to work than it was to actually cut public transport.
With a fleet of electric bikes. The thing that
So are they doing it? Is that staff member doing it?
No, I don't think so. There was an 8-hour wait, I think, at the coach station at Coffs Harbour. So probably not.
So things like public transport, by putting that in here, that then gives the illusion that that's somehow the responsibility of local government to me. So, why would you do that? Because then people are going, yeah, public transport's terrible. Council are hopeless at public transport.
So
I sort of wonder why they're in there. I mean, why wouldn't you target the things that we actually do rather than pulling those other things out? I know this is not you, this is a consultant, obviously, that's doing this, but why would they do that?
because the challenge, Dom, is it feeds from the community strategic plan. And so this is the challenge that all councils face, right? Is that there is a requirement to create a community strategic plan, which is not council's plan. And they do work or perform better in city environments. For instance, I was involved in one at Canterbury Bankstown where we created the community strategic plan, and it was a great lever to work with health and education to build precincts within the city, where you could really leverage the plan to get these industries on board. We're quite limited in the regions with having bodies that can actually do that. We don't have a university that will set up in Bellingen. So it's really, we are quite limited in what we can do, but then by developing the community strategic plan, it sets all of the needs and aspirations of community, from housing to transport to all the things that council isn't directly responsible for. But then that's where we have, I guess, in the plan, a 3-tiered approach, what we deliver, what we partner on, and what we advocate for. And they're the types of things that then set what council can achieve in its term in working towards the aspirations of the community. But at every point, anyone in the community, any organisation can also stand up and take ownership of this plan. And so that's where it doesn't all fall on council, but in the absence of other organisations that are, I guess, formed in a format that can advocate or fight for community need, councils generally become the custodians. That makes sense.
But it does remind us, saying that example, that we need to continue to advocate for better public transport for our community.
And that's where in the advocacy statements, these are the types of things that we build into the plan to go, okay, well, how do we do that? And I think, look, we did see a bit of that happen through the landslip with transport and what we do for community and buses and schools during that time. Again, it's not council's responsibility, but we played an active role in ensuring that that worked.
And I'm stuck too, just looking at the community priorities sheet, the ones that score highest, we can sort of outline as being an industry average, because obviously that's specifically for here. But say if you're looking at 9 and 8, which two of the things that score the highest there, when you go on to compare it to the industry average, in terms of the sport and recreation facilities and services, we're way under what the industry average is. And for the libraries one, which scores absolutely the highest on this, we're still at the bottom of the bar.
Mm-hmm.
So is that saying something about, what is that saying something about? Is that about our community in particular, or is it simply that other places are doing it better? Or
Yeah, look, I think, sometimes people will be satisfied with the level of service, even if it's not up to the benchmark standard.
okay,
And I think that's what we find here, that I guess there are certain things that people, in metro councils would have, way more access to, heated swimming pools and things like that. People might say that our pools are really important, even though we don't have a, heated indoor swimming pool, because the community may, be at a view that that's not something you would get in a town this small, but they wouldn't necessarily still rate their pools as less important. So there are quite a few variables in how this works. And again, I guess the intent with these is to use them as guides. They're not the answer, and I think that's the challenge we have with community engagement as well. We do get a great segment of our community responding. However, it's still not 13,264 people. So we do have to consider the quiet community in our decision making as well, and balance those sorts of things out. It is very easy to get skewed feedback in a lot of these things, because there are certain parts of our community that are very active, and they will stand up during these processes to ensure their interests accurate or adequately captured and documented. So it is, again, a real balancing act when we get all of the community feedback, to really look at that in an objective and balanced way, and then consider how we
Surely this is just comparing us with other shires that are on the market program.
Yes, it gives you
Correct.
relativities.
So it's
not
not really giving you an absolute overall every shire in the country.
no.
So
it's a limited, I guess, sample size.
So you kind of need to know, this could be all inner city shires, couldn't it? So we're comparing ourselves with not really like for like.
but it isn't. But I'd have to get you the breakdown of who it is, who is involved.
Yeah, so it can only be a bit of a guide, can't it? It can't be the.
It's indicative.
Yeah.
Yep.
It can't
And look,
be the be all and end all.
more people that participate, the better it's going to give you that guidance.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to ask is, in other states, is the funding of local government different? Like, so in Western Australia, for example, does the local state government give local government more money?
It will vary.
Yeah, so let's use an example, ratepen. So it's been in New South Wales since the 70s. Victoria introduced it, but Western Australia doesn't have it. So that's a big difference in terms of your funding model. Yeah.
Australia doesn't have it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're probably the most limited with regards to that sort of thing. And that's, I guess, in those states that don't have it, it's basically more of a political process, the rates, because the council can come in and go, right, we're increasing our rates by 15% this year, and they might get voted back in. That's how it works. Whereas you, as councillors within New South Wales, you don't necessarily have that option. You can go through the SRB process, but that's a a nightmare, as we know, and it really puts it more onto you. But I guess the ability to deliver services that the community said we're happy to pay for is not necessarily within your remit.
Mind you, the community don't know that.
No, well, and that's the challenge that you've got is, in reality, not a lot of people care about local government and councils to that extent that they actually want to understand it. Like, we live it and breathe it, so we think it's really important. But in reality, the community, if things are going okay, we're not at the forefront of their minds.
I think they will get a lot more interested.
If we have to
I
stop
mean,
delivering.
if you went to, if you spoke to people about halving the amount of bin collections, for example, then people would start to ask that question, why? But I think that's the hardest part, is that hazy part between what our responsibilities are and what they're not. And we're going through that list there. There's probably about 6 that aren't. And then there's probably about another 12 or something that are but aren't. Again, things like rivers and the environment, of course, that's our responsibility, but it isn't. In terms of the legislation, it's not our responsibility. We don't.
And that's where I think local government will get to in the future. If we can't fund our statutory responsibilities, we're going to have to look at those things that aren't our statutory responsibilities and go, well, can we keep affording to provide those? And that's the challenge that I think we're going to have, because a lot of these things, as we can see, are really important to our community. But we're going to have to go back to the state and say, well, weeds management, for example, sorry, state government, that's your responsibility from a statute perspective, and back to you. They're the sorts of things that are tough decisions. And when we look at the budget and you go, okay, well, if I look at, say, lifeguard services or youth services, or these are all important things. Are they our statutory responsibility to deliver? Probably not. But even having said that, if you were to remove them, it's not providing a lot of money to us either.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the conversation with the community that we have to have should be one that's a statewide conversation with the community. Like, instead of the community then going, oh, it's Bellingham Council's fault, or it's that's where LG New South Wales have got to come in and go,
actually,
this is where we're at. This is whether they're willing to do that or not is another thing. And they, there's too many people that have got links to certain,
political
to the
parties.
government, so
Yep.
or whatever. They'll be very reluctant to come out and say. I mean, that's a conversation that obviously needs to be had, and regional councils are always going to struggle more than the city. The city spend more on fireworks than we do on our roads. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a really difficult conversation, but I think it needs to be very, very clear. And some of that stuff on here where we're talking about public transport, we probably just, maybe there's that list there to be colour coded in terms of what our responsibilities are and what aren't. There's another really good way for the community to go, oh, I thought that's what council did.
Yep.
I think you've hit a bit of a point there too with regards to local government New South Wales, and maybe we need to, as an organisation, to start putting up some of these as motions for the annual conference.
Well, it's probably, I mean, I wouldn't be, I mean, it's obviously probably algo in some ways. I'm sure it's happening across the country.
Oh, it is 100%. And we are not alone. And some of the stuff that this is going to show later on sort of demonstrates from a New South Wales perspective, at least, that it's becoming a systemic issue. Well, not is becoming.
I think it's really evident that, in a way, local government has been complicit in the whole process of cost shifting, because what happens is local governments see there's a gap in community service and they fill it. So you've got some rural councils that are providing aged care services, but some that actually pay for their GPs to come to their town, they pay for their accommodation, they pay their outrageous fees, the whole works. You've got councils that provide, the support centre up in Dorrigo because there was a need up there. So there's all sorts of things that councils are doing because they see a need, but it's not recognised in the rate pegging model, which still really is based on rates of rubbish and roads.
Well, I mean, and it goes down to, you know, as we all know, the amount of unrateable land products and, you know, the use of our roads by the timber industry in many cases. And I think we're going to see, we're going to see a lot more of that with the, you know, the private property lobby. So, you know, I notice that even on the Kalang, as we're fixing it, just, you know, there's logging trucks come up, which is, in some ways, you go, well, you fix your road up, fix your bridges up to allow people to then, with no,
Just have to go.
no,
recourse.
don't pay anything
Yeah.
to council to do that. There's no, we don't even know where it's happening. So there's all of those things that come in, but I mean, it's going to be such a hard sell because I think you're right, Todd. A lot of people don't care, but I think they'll start to.
Could I add to that I think that I think the biggest argument for Bellingen is that we're carbon capturing for the state. We're protecting biodiversity for the state and we're taking a financial hit for it.
Yeah,
As Dom said, unrateable land like that. That I think that needs to be a part of, you know, preparing climate-wise, is that we're actually taking a hit for the whole state and the world, really, as one of the most biodiverse places in the world.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I presented a financial sustainability discussion last week in Sydney, and when I mentioned that our community has 55% unrateable land, the looks on the people in the actual room was like they were astonished that we had so much unrateable land. So yeah, we are certainly at a disadvantage as a community. We've got the great advantage that we have those state forests and national parks, but from a financial perspective, it certainly puts a greater burden on our community, that's for sure. So, all right, we might keep moving.
Just before we move on, just with the community scorecard stuff, I just had a quick look. They did provide a really detailed report when we undertook that process, which is on our website as well. But I've just had a look, and there's 49 councils that participated when we did the original community scorecard. So that's how our industry benchmarking works. And then
Australia-wide.
Yeah, Australia-wide, 49 councils, but then they've split those. You can break it down into regional and metropolitan councils in the data report there. So it's probably, you know, almost 50-50, I think, of regional and metropolitan within those participants as well.
So I'll get Todd to send that link back out to you again as well, so that we can do that.
Yeah, I think it is on the portal. I'll pull it up and share the info back out. But I guess, yeah, so as we keep moving at a really high level, again, what our plan looks like. So you'll see the 5 themes where we've tried to break down what strategies are there, the 4-year commitments of the term of council. We've got 51 service areas that we've defined under the plan, and 64 key actions for the year ahead in what we plan to individually deliver. So again, like a lot of this information will start to look very similar as we continue to produce plans and reports. The intent is to try and keep the language the same, because I think, Dom, the key point in trying to get community on board is the time they spend thinking and doing this work. It's not much. And I guess that consistency really helps bring it home for people to get more familiar with what it means. So Chris will go into a lot of this in detail, but again, a real high level snapshot of where the money comes from. So, you know, we plan to raise just under $66 million in the year ahead. You'll note that the rates and annual charges percentage has jumped up from, I think, roughly 27-28% last year. But that doesn't mean we're getting more money. What it really means is we're getting less grants. So it just skews the percentages. And again, at the financial intensive I was at last week, when I spoke and said that, you know, we've got 27-28% rates income, you know, people were horrified to see that, because, you know, a lot of councils are sitting at 50% of their income comes from rates. So
Where did the 60% self-funded come from? Where did that figure come from? Is that something?
The own source revenue.
Yeah.
So that's just a figure that the OLG came out with as a platform or as a benchmark. Yep.
they have also a how to do sheet.
We'll have a metro population.
Well, for us though, when you look at where we are at probably 57, 58%, because user fees and charges are included in that. Interest and investment revenue would be included in that, and probably other revenue as well. So we are getting close to the 60%, but we're not quite there.
I've actually seen a heat map of the whole of New South Wales, and basically red being those councils that don't meet the ratio, green meet the ratio. Basically anything west of the Great Dividing Range is mostly red. So it's really about where you are in terms of whether you can meet it.
Which comes back to the point about how they decide where the federal assistance grants go.
Exactly. Yeah. Formula that they can't even publicly release.
Yes.
And so then again, this is sort of how we present the information back to the community about, okay, where the money comes from and then where does it go? And this is how we basically break it down for community to understand how we carve up the spend. We will go into a lot more drill down detail when we get into the budget. But the intent here is for the community to really understand, okay, well, this is how much money gets spent on admin versus regulation services, 10% on environment, and it gives them a bit of a picture about where their investment's going. You'll see here, again, the transport maintenance renewal program. So a huge amount of our funds are going back into our program of works. And I guess that talks to the importance of the community view on roads versus where council directs its funding, to ensure that, we are working towards those commitments. Sorry. Yeah. And then again, another really high level spend on our capital program for 26-27. We will go into this in detail, but how we are sort of presenting some of this information in the plans to the community so they can really again see, okay, well, road and footpath investments, make up more than 50% of the capital program for the next year, to try and, I guess, demonstrate that what the community is seeking is actually being delivered or planned in the plans. And then, sort of what we'll continue to do is as we undertake the next scorecard program, look to re-communicate this information back out to the community once they get involved, but then again, work with, what comes back from that view and how we continue to plan into the coming years. So that's kind of a bit of a whip around on, I guess, the overarching operational plan view and where we're headed for the next year. We will spend most of today getting into the detail around the challenges of the budget, and then, breaking it down into a lot more areas. We'll get into the rates model, we'll get into the fees and charges as well. So there is a lot to get through. But I guess before we get off the operational plan, is there anything specific that anyone wanted additionally to ask? But look, if they do come up during the day, also feel free to jump in, just in case there was anything else to talk to.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yep.
One of the things that's come up a lot is an evident increase in the use of consultants rather than internal staff. And my understanding is that the research shows it's short-term gain for long-term pain. I think there'll be questions about that from community when talking about bang for buck.
Yep.
Yeah, so if anyone can comment on that.
So I guess a really interesting process we've gone through, Jenny, this year in trying to make the budget work. We've got some key documents that need to be reviewed. So our Disability Inclusion Action Plan, our Economic Development and Tourism Plan were both a couple of key items that were flagged for review, and that direct discussion came up about funding for consultants to assist with that work, and then how we brought that back in to have internal discussion about, well, is there capacity with the team to undertake those exercises internally? And so they're two key bodies of work that we have taken funding out of the proposed budget for external consultants to allocate internal resources to undertake those exercises internally. Now, I guess what comes with that is, a decrease in beautification of fancy reports. So, this is where we need to probably get back to going, how do we reset the expectation of what things look like, and what comes out, and also about how we undertake this work. So for instance, we have engaged consultants to assist with community engagement, which has really helped with the analytics around what people say. By programming that work internally, for instance, disability inclusion action plan is a good example. The staff member that we have resourced to undertake our community portfolio is employed for 21 hours a week. So, by reducing budget programs to manage that, it means there'll be a decrease in broad outputs of activities to accommodate the review processes that go on. And so I think it's just about how we have that discussion and set that expectation that, we may do less community awareness days, that we might run, 3 basic drop-in sessions to get feedback on these things and run a survey, but the exercise won't be extensive, is probably what I'm trying to articulate, and that we will use resource to do this work rather than pay consultants. So that's kind of where we've got to with some of this work. And I don't know if you've got specific examples about when you reference consultants, but that's the sort of thinking that we've undertaken.
I think that's important, Todd. Like if the community coming at councillors and making very big statements around consultants, like we need specificity to be able to interrogate that and see if that's actually reasonable. Is it grounded? Is it not? Because there are other sides of it that basically, if we were to develop a workforce, for instance, over recent years to deliver the scale of capital program that we've done, that also introduces challenges and a degree of risk in terms of the size of our establishment for council. Do we have the expertise? What does that look like? And sometimes there is grounds for utilising a contractor or a consultant basis to deliver work because you're trying to manage also the ongoing sustainability. So we use additional resources to deal with peak in demand, and then we drop back to basically a bit more of a core establishment as works wind off. So I think it's important for the community to be able to support councillors and articulate with some clarity what those concerns specifically relate to, because as a general statement, it's a little bit hard for us to then be able to respond to and give you some confidence that we're obviously looking to make sure that we are being sustainable in the way that we look to resource things.
Well, I guess my question on notice then, Ashley, is has use of external providers increased? Like that's, I think, a fair question, over time. And I think just the process of consultation needs to be ready to explain why that is, if it is, and if it isn't. I understand there's a heap of expertise that is possible to maintain.
The answer is very clearly yes. Like if you look, especially around the capital program, and you look at the tenders that have come to council and we're awarding works to private specialist providers, you think of Surin Coastal Villages, you think of half our Fixing Country Bridges programs, that's been undertaken by a contracted workforce.
Yeah, I think contractors and consultants are different.
Okay.
Consultant to me is someone that's providing us advice on like the development, say, of our town master plans.
Yep.
A contractor that delivers a bridge is not, I don't think, what Councillor Fenton's probably doing. I think we're probably talking about that person that provides us with professional advice or a plan, or like, to me, the development of a plan for Lavender's Bridge upgrade is a consultant. The person that provided us with the town master plans is a consultant. Contractor that we have to engage to do DAs or that type of thing, they're not consultants to me. So I probably have the opposite view. I don't think we've been using a great range of consultants. Like we've had the town centre master plans that we did use a consultant for. We used a consultant for the Lavender Bridge design work and that sort of thing, which will be coming to council as a workshop in the near future. But I don't think there's a whole heap of consultants being engaged across the board. So, but we'll have.
I mean, a lot of these concerns might come from the same people that have present the argument to councillors all the time that you've got so many people working in that building, get rid of half of them, and we don't have enough people on the roads. Well, when you actually are on the inside, you understand that it's actually a very small team of people working within these walls. It's a very lean organisation, and sometimes you do need to outsource some expertise because the machinery here just doesn't have the number of people, and in some instances the expertise or the capability to produce what you need. So that would be my counter argument to any of those concerns, that in reality you might have a perception of what you think is the case, but it may not be correct.
Sorry, can I just
Well,
make a
that's what
comment?
I'm just flagging, I guess, as a question on notice, is that whole question. Has it increased to outsourcing more or not? Or has the situation changed, or is this fairly typical of what happens in councils of this band?
Yeah, so I've been here 11 years. It was an issue when I first arrived in the organisation. It used to come up all the time, how much we're spending on consultants. That was 11 years ago, so it certainly hasn't changed. Up until the last quarterly budget review, changes that the government made, we were reporting that every quarter in terms of all the consultants we used for the previous quarter. Last year, we had $446,000. So I'm happy to break that down for councillors if they want it. But it's not a new issue. It's certainly been around for a long time. I think you've nailed it.
Then that'd be interesting to put that 400K in a percentage term of total budget.
Yeah, it's very small.
All right.
Well, could
What
you-
would